welcome to Sharing Your Agency's Story, sponsored by Wisconsin Literacy. Wisconsin Literacy is a nonprofit statewide coalition of 70 literacy agencies. We strengthen literacy statewide through expert trainings, personalized consultations, health literacy, workforce connections, and advocacy. I'm Liz Fitzpatrick, one of your two presenters today. I'm the Data and Communications Manager at Wisconsin Literacy. I manage a lot of our external communications. You've probably received some of the monthly emails that I do. I also do the social media, quarterly digital and printed newsletters, website updates, and press releases for our organization. Marsha, share a bit about yourself.
Well, I'm the Southeast Regional Consultant, and I know some of you that are on this program today, but I'm also here because I have a 20+ year background in owning a marketing and public relations firm called the Lakeshore Studio. And what we did with Lakeshore Studio was specialized in nonprofit. So I'm excited to share some of my experiences, but I really want to hear about yours.
All right, so I'm going to attempt a poll. We've had hiccups with polls today, so we'll see how this goes. It looks like I can launch this, so this is exciting. So the poll questions are going to be about how you're already sharing your story. So if you can take up like just a few moments.
It worked.
Yay, it worked. So just take a few moments and share with us about your experiences with communications. There's a couple of questions like your frequency of communication, who does your communication types, and experience levels. So if you can just take a few moments, if you're having trouble with the poll, let me know, just to see where everybody is at. All right, and for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results with everybody. So you should be able to see, we've got people, the biggest frequency is weekly for communications. We have kind of divided between a full-time and part-time staff and a volunteer on who does the communications. For communication types, we've got a lot of different ones. Social media is big, word of mouth. Yes. I mean, that is just huge. I know for promoting your programs, newsletters as well. And then we got kind of a mix of experience levels. We've got some beginners, some intermediate, and a few experts in the crowd. So that's awesome. With that in mind, we're going to hit up our next slide, which, well, that was the poll, but the breakout rooms. So I learned a valuable lesson in one of our sessions on breakout rooms. If, as the manager, I need you guys to stay here if you are interested in joining me for sharing your story fundamentals. So this is really kind of targeted for beginners, maybe like early intermediates, but basically it's going to be covering 3 basic questions you should ask yourself as you're sharing your story. I'm going to have a lot of interactive documents, you know, to use as we go through this. And Marsha's session is more geared for maybe experts who are really looking to share ideas, brainstorm, maybe like present some problems they faced, but get kind of feedback. So it's more of a round table discussion. So I'm going to hit up the breakout room. And in this case, I'm only going to set up one breakout room. And I'm going to let you guys choose where you want to go. So let's see how this works. Test it out. Let me know if you're having a problem. Marsha, are you able to join a room?
I do not see an option to do that, so you may have
Okay.
to send me.
Let me see. It says assign. So let me try it again.
Okay.
Breakout rooms. Oh, it is assign. Yep, it's only letting me assign. Well, that's a shame.
Okay.
Allow participants to room. It says allow participants to choose a room. I'm going to attempt to open the rooms. So when I open it, can you choose?
Breakout room, let me look. Yes, I can see I can join room 1. So I'm going there now.
Fantastic. So whoever wants to stay with me for some of the story fundamentals, just stay here. Don't go into a room. And we'll come back in about 20 minutes. All right. So on that note, I will move to the next slide. So whoever's staying with me, I want you to just take a few moments and to share a couple of things in the chat, or you can unmute yourself because we're going to have a smaller group. Feel free to unmute or just use the chat, however you're feeling, whatever your noise level is. But take a few minutes to share what makes your agency unique. And then I'll share some things that make Wisconsin literacy unique.
How do I join Marsha's room?
You should be able to join. Now, who is asking that question?
That's me, Kathy. I'm sorry. I'm
Kathy?
such a dork.
No, I can assign you to. I can assign you to that room too.
It's also along the bottom of the other options where it says breakout rooms. That's how you can put yourself in there.
Wonderful. Does anybody want to share what makes them unique? Or I can just go straight into what makes Wisconsin literacy unique.
Well, I'll go. I mean, one of the things, this is John from the Adult Learning Center in Milwaukee, John Gildenbach.
Hi, John.
Hi, good to see you, Liz. Yeah, so one of the things that we always talk about, I mean, I feel funny saying this in a conference of adult literacy experts, but you know, one of the things we talk about our unique offering is that we do have what we call the traditional classroom setting. All of our main classes are led by lead teachers who are certified by MATC here in Milwaukee, but that we couple that with the volunteer tutor support that allows us to break the groups into, you know, one-to-one instruction and small groups so that students can get the individual support they need.
Yeah, exactly. I hear that a lot. That one-to-one component is really what sets a lot of the literacy agencies apart, even when they pair with a technical college. That, you know, especially in smaller communities where the technical college may be doing the class setting, but they provide that one-to-one support, and it really does make literacy programs stand out. So I think, thank you so much for sharing that. Does anybody want to share anything else real quick?
Yeah, just to prevent things. Absolutely.
Robin disappeared. So I'll go with what makes Wisconsin literacy unique. So when I think about Wisconsin literacy, we're statewide. We're a statewide organization. We have a health literacy division that focuses on community-based work. We have workforce connections and we have advocacy. So those are some of the things that really stand out for me. So just to kind of get the ball rolling and thinking about some things, position statements are really a great way to think about critically about what makes your organization unique and to have it kind of set into like a 40-word kind of description. These are how it kind of breaks out. So the position statement is basically describing what your organization does and why it's unique. Hopefully you got the document that I had sent out. I am going to pause my share for a moment so that I can put this in the chat for you guys. But I'll give you just a few minutes to kind of work with this document and come up with, you know, the complete part of that sentence. I was asking if anybody had pieces of this that they'd like to share. Thank you, Margaret. We like to be seen as a catalyst. I love that word. For adult learners to gain skills, connect to the community, and achieve goals. Sarah, we're the people who help meet students where they are at in their educational journey and provide the necessary support to help them reach their goals. I like those. Those are wonderful. For Wisconsin Literacy, we have a sort of a different service that we do. So for us, we're the people who build the capacity of organizations and individuals statewide to improve their communities and themselves through literacy services and skills. No one does capacity building better than we do, and we like to be seen as trusted, innovative, inclusive, and experienced statewide organizations. So when I take those pieces and I put it into like a 40-word statement, it's Wisconsin Literacy's trusted and experienced staff builds the capacity and potential of organizations and individuals through improved literacy services and skills. We meet people and organizations where they are at and help them become the best they can be. So we've used this statement in grant writing. We've used it on our donation page. We use it in a number of ways. So I wanted to brings me to the rule of 7. I want to thank Fox Valley Literacy for the photo. They had given us permission to share this photo. So I just want to put that out there. People need to see things at least 7 times to remember them. So sometimes when we're messaging out, it feels very repetitive. But the truth is that people just don't remember. And especially with how much communication is happening, especially digitally right now, it's more important than ever to sort of repeat those messages and repeat your mission and your vision. Just make sure you're consistent so that people know who you are and what you do. Even if it feels like you're being incredibly repetitive, you're not. So really quick in the chat, if you can share the audience you want to communicate to. Who do you think needs to know your stories and know about your organization? And then I'll share some of our target audience members. So when I think about our audiences, I know your audiences are probably different. You want to reach adults, business community in your county, prospective students, thank you, Sarah, who need our services, and prospective volunteer tutors. It's exactly the kinds of audience members that I think of when I think of you guys, but there might be even more. Maybe it's a technical college partner. Maybe it's a work site, a farm, donors, of course, donors as well. So some of the ones that I think of for Wisconsin Literacy, because of who we serve, are other community-based literacy organizations. So, the regional literacy consultants and community coordinators, they are out in the community trying to see who's doing literacy, and that might need our support, and find out who they are and to let them know who we are. We have partners in government, Department of Public Instruction and Workforce Development. We have healthcare partners and community groups like Alzheimer and Dementia Alliance of Wisconsin. We have state representatives. For example, the Finance Committee, Michelle meets with Representative Amy Laudenbach and others. And then donors and potential donors. So again, that donors. So in the chat, I have my next activity. And that's creating an audience avatar. So there's going to be a lot of questions on that document. Just take a few minutes to fill out maybe the questions that really resonate with you. And then we'll discuss. So just take a few minutes. All right. So as you are kind of wrapping that up, you might be wondering why I had you create an audience avatar. An audience avatar is a persona that can help you really target your message to one person. It's very useful when you're writing a piece, especially when you're thinking about donors or adults that you really think should come to your program, using like one person in your mind. And so this personality is a way to personalize your message. So as you're kind of wrapping up some of those comments and just, kind of what you jotted down, Does anyone want to share some of the elements of their avatar or persona? And I will definitely share the one that I have as an example next. Yeah, Heather, hi. Yeah, I can totally share these slides with you. I am happy to help in any way with staff development and ambassador training. So sure. And I can also, I think I already sent to all the registrants these documents that they can use going forward. You know, you have them if you downloaded them. Definitely take more time with it when you have the time. So another thing to keep in mind when you have sort of this one sort of personality or persona is that it really actually prompts you to speak in plain language. You know, it makes you think about, why is this message important to this audience? What does that audience member, that person, need to do after this message? And it allows you to talk directly to your reader and to use a positive and conversational tone. So the avatar that I have for literacy programs, when I think, and I'm trying to think about the things that would interest you guys in, say, our e-newsletter, for example, you know, or what are your core needs? And my avatar is Elle. And for Elle, it's about community enrichment and making an impact on a person's life. And I get that from talking to so many of you. So I know that that's something that's really important to our members and the staff there. And what do you need to help solve with a program or an event or a problem? You need support and to not feel isolated. So I try to make sure that we always have some sort of professional development or a tip in those e-newsletters. And then tools and resources to do your job better. So those are kinds of the things that I think about when I'm creating that avatar. So another thing to think about is where people get their information. So when you're thinking about your target audiences, and we saw businesses in the community, prospective students, volunteers, where are they getting their information? Or how can you find out? Social media or socially from others in the community, that word of mouth, that was really huge. Yes, definitely. Thank you, Sarah. So one of the things that I recently found out from going to a Wisconsin health literacy training was from Jaron Totten from LGBT Plus in Detroit. He said in targeting communications to LGBT plus communities, that it was very useful to promote it like the gay bar in town, especially in smaller communities. And that never occurred to me, but he knew that from experience and from being a part of that community. Word of mouth, Google searches, social media, website, you know, all those things. Communication reviews, finding out where, or looking at where people are coming from. So for example, I have email. In a communications review, I was able to see that for our Giving Tuesday campaign, 76% of donations came through our email appeal. Another thing when you're thinking of social media is looking at under page insights, people, and knowing who are the demographics that are following us on Facebook, and kind of honing, you know, that audience, like that avatar to that person, or finding out, you know, is that matching with who you think you're talking to? We know peer-to-peer fundraising is huge for us. And also that's like statistically significant as well in general fundraising knowledge, is that peer-to-peer is becoming more and more important. We know one-to-one discussions, that word of mouth, that direct connection with the finance committee is very, very impactful. So I am about to close all the rooms. So they will be joining us shortly for information about social media use. So when we're thinking about where our audience is coming from, one final thing I wanted to note is that, you know, surveying people is very important. So when you're thinking about wanting to know where you're having an impact, just asking. You can do casual surveys, or you can use a Survey Monkey too. You can survey your donors, you could survey your students, you could survey your tutors. So, you know, all those things where you can collect more information about where they're really getting their information from. But another way is to kind of know what demographics you're trying to reach, and using like Pew Research to know what demographics are using what tools. So that's where this slide leaves us. And as people will hopefully be joining us soon, we're about to have sort of a larger discussion. Hello, my friends from the breakout rooms. We're going to have the larger group discussion now. And I'm kind of touching on at this point, using sources like Pew Research to kind of know where people of a demographic you're trying to reach are getting their information. So I use social media because that's one of the pieces of information that I was able to get from Pew, and I thought it was really interesting. So for example, if you're thinking, I want to target young people that maybe, you know, didn't complete high school. So they might be 18 to 29. You know, if you look on the information on the left hand of the screen, you can see that Snapchat and Instagram are really good places to target those people. So if you're thinking, man, that's where I really want to start targeting, and you see a need, you think, you know, with COVID impacts, maybe you find out that there's a lot higher dropout rates, and that you think that that's a new demographic that your organization should really be serving. That using that social media channel to talk to them makes a lot of sense. The big rule of thumb with social media is, if you can only do one, do Facebook, because as you can kind of see from both charts, if you look at the bottom, you can see that Facebook, all the dots are sort of bunched together, that Facebook kind of hits a lot of different demographics and reaches a lot of people. So thinking in terms of using the data that you have, if you were at earlier session on the PAC data, using data, you know, for communicating, as well as data for knowing where people are getting their sources and their information. So my next slide is Marsha. Yes, do we have a question?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to, I think I had one, maybe like one thing about on Facebook. I'm a reporter for the Journal Sentinel, so we really monitor on Facebook page, especially for the communities we cover, because we have different, you know, beat communities. But I would kind of suggest joining a Facebook group, like for instance, if it's I'm trying to think, like if it's like people helping people in Waukesha County, I think there's a group like that, you know. So like maybe if you join your group, and then if you have a success story of how you helped so or whatever, you know, like whatever story, sharing it on that page, because then most likely a reporter will see it. And if they don't cover the story, then you never know if they're doing like an enterprise piece on literacy, you know, or whatever. So that's something I might suggest.
Thank you so much. That's a really good suggestion.
And the big group, or the other group, is back now. And this is perfect timing, because we were just starting to touch on social media. So wonderful. Thank you, Liz.
Well, I don't know where you are.
Well, hopefully everyone's back from the breakout session. Marsha, do you want to touch on building the media relations?
I can, and we had just started talking. We had touched on this in the other group, but building media relations really is about making you the expert in your area. So you are the literacy experts in your community, and you need to make that clear to the media folks that you work with. And when we talk about media, we're talking about newspaper, we're talking about radio, we're talking about television, we're talking about the social medias. But right now, we're really talking about what we consider the general electronic media as well as print media. So newspapers, radio, television primarily. To make yourself the expert, you need to reach out to them. And you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can certainly continue to send the news releases that you send, but make sure you target those releases to the appropriate person. A lot of times there's an education editor or a community editor. Both of them would be appropriate to any literacy information. But the other thing that for some people is really difficult to do, but it is so important, and that is to pick up the phone and call them. Get to know them, get to find out what they're looking for, get to have them understand who you are, offer to have them come visit your agency if they have time. And for a lot of editors or even reporters, that can be really difficult to squeeze in. So never be offended that that's the case. But let them get to know you. Let them get to know your voice. Let them get to know your agency. If you can Zoom with them, let them get to know your face. Because then when something comes up that has to do with maybe the dropout rate, and they know that you have a GED program, they are going to come back to you as the experts in that area. Always localize your story. Always, we can be talking about Afghan refugees because, boy, that's a hot topic right now. But if you have an ELL program that will be welcoming Afghan refugees, what a perfect opportunity to talk about it and to get the word out. And then finally, when you send those emails, and in our group, we were just talking about, sending emails kind of close to the date of whatever the event is or whatever you're talking about. I always called the night before. I called both the area, either the editor, education editor, events editor, whatever, called the night before and said, I just want to, remind you that we sent you guys a news release. I can resend it to you now. Just curious. The other department that I called very often were the photo people. Now, I know today a lot of reporters are taking their own photos. And so sometimes that, that doesn't even exist, but that's another place. Now, keep in mind, if there's a giant fire or an explosion or some other big news hits, obviously they're not going to come to your spelling bee or to your international potluck or whatever else you might be inviting them to. But always invite, even if no one ever comes, at least they're seeing what you're doing.
I think, like, for me, I think that is like really, really important, because I think you never know, because it might be like an enterprise story. Like for me, like, let's say if you send me an invite to an event that I'm not interested in covering, no, but at least I know what you do. So that I might think, well, maybe a good story to do as an enterprise story, would be this. And then I know that you exist, because I think that is like really important. So even if it's something like in the mailing list or whatever. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, that's okay, Kathy. For those who don't know, explain what an enterprise story means.
Okay, that's like that's kind of like a big feature story, that you kind of that kind of covers different communities. So that would be like for instance, like we usually don't cover fundraising events. But because of the pandemic, I did an enterprise story on how fundraisers are looking for different nonprofits during the pandemic. Like, how are they raising money,
right?
To do that. So then, and then because of that, there were like 5 nonprofits doing fundraisers that I was able to include in it, but I normally wouldn't cover that.
But you did, because you knew A, that they existed, and B, they were impacted by COVID. Well, perfect example. It's a story that could be picked up by anybody else and localized again. So any other comments or questions about media relations? Okay, Liz, I guess we move on.
All right. So we are a little bit close to the end. So I'm going to go through these a little bit faster than I had originally envisioned. I'm going to send you a couple of really valuable YouTube links. This first one is a person who's talking about the importance of sharing those stories. So those learner stories, those tutor stories that really humanize the work that you do. It creates a sense of recognition and empathy in those stories, and it does motivate people, the listener, to an action. So thinking, the other important thing that I think she shares in this is, you know, now is the time, you know, as you go, you collect those stories. And for me, I use an Excel spreadsheet, but there might be, you guys, and share in the chat, some ways that you collect stories over time and you track those stories, and in different ways, you know, so you know what purpose you would like to use the stories for, as well as you're keeping track of them and not having to suddenly scramble to get a whole bunch of stories together. The other part of this that I really like is that story structure. And that's another YouTube video that we have that really kind of talks about how, I'm not a fan of the character description, but, you know, how you can connect to that audience, and show, you know, someone that any conflicts and the resolution and the call to action. And that could be sharing an adult learner story for motivating other adult learners to come to your program and saying, you know, this is the work that we do, and this is how this person was affected, and you should come to our program. So those are some things that I think about with storytelling. We do not have a lot of time, so I'm going to bring these things up, but this came up really recently for us, and something that we will be really thinking about. But how do we share our stories with respect and empowerment to our students? So one of the things that I was thinking, and this is from a point of curiosity, so I wonder, have other people kind of thought about this? How are we sharing and collecting these stories with that empowerment in mind? Are we making sure that we have permission to use the stories, signed release statements, giving the student leave to say no? Are we making them a part of the narrative and review process? Are we using their words? Has anybody else kind of thought about that for their program? And maybe you even have kind of some suggestions that you'd like to share.
Georgia, I saw your hand up.
Twice I have seen in the last few years where a student will come back and they're working wherever the class, and something about them is so evolved that the rest of the students, the beginners and all that, look at them and say, I can do it. That I could do that. I know I could do that. And it just sort of mesmerizes the whole class as they see what is possible. So just study.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. I love that. You know, the other thing I would caution against is just trotting learners out to perform. And I know none of you would do it intentionally, but it goes back to some of the things Liz just pointed out, that the student or the learner is committed to doing that they're not, you know, they're not guilted into it, that they're not so nervous that you're afraid they're going to faint. And you need to let people back out if they are at that point that suddenly they look into the room and they can't do it. So I would, again, really encourage you to think about that.
One of the premises that I have in my teaching is that I don't want you to be here forever. I don't, you know, I'm going to out the door sooner or later. The whole purpose of teaching ESL is to make you, to empower you in this community,
right,
in this environment. And so nobody's guilted into anything in my class.
So
good for you.
Cynthia,
okay,
it looks like Cynthia has a comment or her hand up. Did you want to share something, Cynthia?
I wonder if her hand up is still from before.
Oh, maybe it is.
Yeah, I bet it is. Okay.
So just to cover that, and just something for you to think about. I know that's something that we are thinking about at Wisconsin Literacy. If you were at the vulnerable populations, working with vulnerable populations, and you have something that you wanted to share from that session, please feel free to in the chat I'm going to give you guys a few more tips here, and then we'll close out. So just some of the tools of the trade to think about is when taking photos, don't be afraid to get people's, faces. Of course, this is, with the idea that they have permission, you have permission to take their photos again, but don't be afraid to get in close and see people's faces. Pay attention to the background as you're taking video or photos, just to make sure that nothing's like poking out of people's heads and things of that nature.
Right.
Yeah. Canva.
We've all seen barbed wire coming out of people's ears.
Yes, that has happened. Canva for nonprofits is an amazing tool. I can't say enough about it. It is basically, it's a website that gives you professional level templates to use. So those of you that are doing like news stories and all kinds of things, and even social media posts, it's a fantastic resource. It has stock photos for free, templates for flyers, social media, newsletters, reports, and slideshows. So anything you can think about. You can even make little videos through Canva, and it makes it pretty easy, and it is fairly intuitive. Again, if anybody was at the PX session, making it local. So that will be, if you were at the Working with Vulnerable Population session and you missed that, but you'd really like to know what that was about, that'll be on our website, and it kind of takes you through that PX skills map, and you're able to like get down to like your county level. And it's a really phenomenal resource. And the Barbara Bush Foundation, they have a map as well. It does some similar things. So it's really those are some nice tools to marry data and storytelling together. And when you do that, you can have a tremendous impact.
Yeah, if I can just jump back to the photos.
Yes.
Really quick. Getting people's faces, not mugshot pictures, but people's expressions. Fill that screen with people. We don't want to see the background. We want to see the people. And Liz and I were conferring on some pictures that we're looking for right now. And oh my gosh, to have people's faces would be absolutely wonderful.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So to close out, basically, I know that you talked about a lot in Marsha's session. In my session, we talked about, what's unique, keeping your audience in mind, focus on where that audience actually gets their information so that you have the biggest bang for your time buck. You guys have limited time. And also don't be afraid to reuse and repurpose stories. So Marsha, if there's any quick comment that you want to share before we close out, that'd be great.
I don't. In fact, I'm afraid my dog is going to bark here because there's somebody doing something to me. So nothing more. It was wonderful, and we appreciated everybody being here. We could use about 2 more hours to talk about all of this.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. If you do have any questions and you want to hang out for just a little bit longer, we can hang out for a little bit longer between sessions. So feel free, to do so.